Hello, my zebras and spoonies. Thanks for coming and hanging out with me today. I am glad that you are here. Today, I am going to be talking about the relationship between chronic illness and fear because I wish that more people understood that having a chronic illness also means having chronic fears, but not in the way that people would typically expect. So, when you have a chronic illness, it is inevitable that you're going to play the what if game from time to time. We need to because it helps us plan for the future. We project into the future and we consider what our prognosis is, and then we ask, what if this happens? And what can I do to be prepared for this possible outcome? This can help us better cope with things when they come up. And things will come up because that's the nature of having a chronic illness. But the what if game can also be a trap. And that leaves us, it can leave us only focusing on all of the things that we feel are the worst possible outcomes for our illnesses. It can leave us feeling afraid for our future. When our prognosis are poor or projects an outcome that is highly undesirable for us, it can only augment that fear. Oftentimes, providers will try to comfort us by telling us that our illness isn't correlated with an increased mortality risk. But these comforts are missing the mark for a few reasons. The first reason is that no one is collecting data on all the things that happen because we have an illness, but aren't really the illness. Like having postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome or POTS. So there's no correlation to having an increased mortality with having POTS, but I feel like this data is incomplete. Having POTS means that I'm at a higher risk for having a fall and hitting my head. And there is a correlation of falls with a head strike and mortality. But when these events occur, it's not documented as a head injury caused by POTS, but as a head injury caused by a fall. Not to mention that having any chronic illness increases the risk for suicide. So, no one is looking at the data in a way that connects these secondary causes like falls and suicide to the actual source, which is chronic illness. And that leaves many of us, myself included, wondering if there really isn't any increased risk of death for many of our diagnoses. I mean, there really just isn't any way to know when they're not looking at the data this way. There isn't data on it. So the second reason that this comfort misses the mark is that most of the times our fears are not actually related to dying. Many times the things that we're most afraid of are the things that we feel our illness could strip away from us and leave us no longer being ourselves. For most of us, this includes a fear of the brain fog becoming so severe that we can no longer maintain a functional hold on reality. But these fears can include many other things. I'm personally afraid that the joints in my hands will degrade enough that I'm no longer going to be able to engage in many of the creative crafts because I won't have the fine motor skills anymore. I fear the day that my bones in my feet are going to cause me to lose the ability to walk because that's going to have a major impact on my working career. I fear that I'm going to develop dementia since I have ADHD and the antihistamines that I need to be on both increase my risk for this. These things are a fundamental part of my identity, and losing them seems like losing myself. None of these fears involve my dying. Instead, these fears center around the idea that my chronic illness has the capacity to attack the very core of how I define myself. So the last reason that this comfort misses the mark is that it fails to understand the what if game. And that playing what if is part of having a chronic illness. And this means that there are times that we're asking our providers what if questions in an effort to better understand our options and our prognosis. These questions don't always even reflect that we're feeling afraid of those outcomes. It could simply mean that it is an outcome that is possible, and we're trying to consider what kind of impact it could have on our lives. There are many possible outcomes that I have considered that are not desirable and would require significant changes in my life, but also don't evoke fear in me. What evokes fear in me is going to be very different than someone else with the same profile of chronic illnesses as me, because we're all very unique individuals. And how our chronic illness impacts us is going to be as unique as we are. I personally believe that having fears is a normal part of being human and that it doesn't make us unhealthy or abnormal. How we manage our fears is what will determine if those fears are impacting our lives in a way that is pathological. Because of this, we need healthy coping skills to help us manage all of these fears that inevitably come up when you have a chronic illness. And one of the best coping skills that we can use is to just talk about them. However, this is often misunderstood and overblown by providers. Just because I'm talking about feeling afraid of something doesn't mean that I am looking for a new treatment or a new medication. Usually, I am just looking for the provider to help me gauge how likely that fear is to become a reality. If I can tell myself that there is a low chance of something happen, it is often easier for me to set aside the fear. However, if it has a pretty high probability of happening, then I personally do better by starting the problem solving before that fear becomes a reality. So that's about all my thoughts on chronic illness and fear. How about you? How do you tend to handle your fears? I'd love to hear what coping skills work for you. Thanks for coming and spending time with me today. If you like the video, give a click on it, on the like button. It really does help. And until we talk again, you guys take care of yourselves.